He called me ungrateful and threw my award just because I refused to give up my six-figure deal. But he had no idea who was listening.
I'm Emma.
And I didn't think standing up for myself would turn my entire career upside down. I was still holding the award in my hands when Mr. Corbin, my boss, snatched it out of my grasp and hurled it across the room. The sleek black plaque clattered against the marble floor and cracked in two like it meant nothing. Ungrateful, he muttered through gritted teeth. After everything I did for you. All because I wouldn't give up my contract with the outside client I had secured on my own, outside work hours, on my own merit. Let me take you to 5 minutes earlier, when I was standing in front of the entire management board, flushed with pride. I'd just been awarded Consultant of the Year, the youngest in company history. I wasn't expecting applause, but when it came, I'll admit, I smiled. It felt earned. But when I stepped back down, Mr. Corbin leaned in. Congratulations, he whispered, voice tight. Now, about that freelance client, you'll hand it over to the firm now, right? I blinked. Excuse me? He chuckled like I was naive. Emma, we gave you that platform. It's only fair your wins become company wins. That's how loyalty works. That was the first time I realized he hadn't clapped. I stood my ground, even as my heart pounded. With all due respect, sir, I got that client independently. The contract is mine. I worked nights. I didn't use company resources. The smirk faded. You're going to regret this, he muttered. And that's when he threw the award.
People gasped.
One woman covered her mouth. But no one spoke up. I quietly bent down, picked up the broken plaque and walked out. And as I reached the elevator, someone stopped me. Emma? It was Elaine, one of the senior directors. I saw what happened.
Can I talk to you?
That moment changed everything. Elaine didn't mince her words once we got to the parking lot. I've watched Corbin treat employees like pawns for years. You're the first person to say no. My hands were still shaking. He's going to ruin my reputation. She touched my shoulder. He's going to try. But he won't win, not if you move smart. She gave me her card. And then, she did something unexpected. I'm leaving the firm next month, she said. I've been starting something of my own. I want you to consider joining me. I was stunned. You believe in me, even after what happened in there? Elaine's gaze didn't waver. You've got guts and integrity, Emma. That's exactly what I need. But nothing prepared me for what came the next day. My office access was revoked. I hadn't even formally quit. When I walked into the building, the security guard looked uncomfortable. Ms. Clarkson, your badge was deactivated this morning. Management said you're on probation pending investigation. Investigation? I repeated. For what? He leaned in. They said client poaching. The room spun. Corbin had actually filed a report against me for stealing the client I had earned on my own. But I wasn't going to cry.
No.
Not this time. I drove straight to my apartment, opened my laptop, and pulled up every email, every calendar record, and every signed contract showing that my work with that client had been entirely separate from my company job. I called a labor attorney. She was blunt but kind. You've got a strong case, especially if you never signed a non-compete or IP clause. I hadn't. I knew that much. But just to be safe, I sent all documentation to my personal encrypted drive and contacted the client. I explained everything, the award, the confrontation, the accusation. And that's when he said something I'll never forget. I believe you. In fact, I heard about that scene. My friend was there. I blinked. Your friend? He chuckled. You didn't know? One of my business partners sits on that advisory board. You made quite an impression, in the best way. If your firm thinks we're backing out, they're mistaken. I laughed for the first time that day. Thank you, Brian. He paused. Actually, would you consider consulting for me directly? Bigger scope, same rate, or higher? My throat tightened. Let me think about it, I whispered, already smiling. I didn't just survive. I leveled up. But I didn't go scorched earth on Corbin. I took the high road. My lawyer filed a formal letter defending my name and requested they cease the defamation or face civil litigation. No threats. Just facts. I posted a single statement on LinkedIn. Proud to continue working with clients who value integrity, transparency, and the right to build beyond the 9 to 5. Thank you to those who reached out with support this week. You reminded me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Within 24 hours, it had 11,000 likes. Elaine called that evening. You ready to talk business? I smiled. Let's do it. Elaine and I met at a small cafe just outside the city that weekend. The same cafe where she'd secretly interviewed candidates for the firm she was quietly building, a consultancy that valued independent thinkers and ethical leadership. When I walked in, she stood to hug me. Not the stiff, corporate type of hug. A real one. I'm glad you came, she said. You've got options now, Emma. Big ones. And I'm not the only one watching. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She slid her phone across the table. You're trending. There it was. My LinkedIn post had been reshared by 3 major business influencers. One captioned it. Proof that integrity still wins. This young woman just became the face of ethical entrepreneurship. I blinked. What is happening? Elaine grinned. You're becoming someone they underestimated, and they can't control that. Now, what do you want to build? I looked down at my coffee. My hands were still raw from the bruising week, but inside, something steadier had started to bloom. I want to create a consultancy that doesn't punish ambition outside of office walls, I said slowly. One where loyalty is earned through respect, not ownership. She nodded. Then let's start. Together. But back at Corbin and Price, things weren't as polished as they appeared. A week after I left, I received a message from Janelle, the firm's star creative. Someone I'd quietly mentored for 2 years. Emma, I know you're gone, but I need to tell you something. Corbin's been spiraling. He held an all-hands meeting and called your departure a betrayal, and then tried to enforce a new policy banning side projects. Half the team is threatening to walk. And I'm thinking of leaving too.
Can we talk?
I texted back instantly. We met later that evening, and I didn't sugarcoat anything. Yes, you'll be starting from scratch. Yes, it'll be hard. But if you're tired of being manipulated, then maybe it's time to leap. Janelle stared at me. Do you have space for a creative director? I smiled. I do now. We were building something, quietly but with purpose. I didn't broadcast my wins. I didn't post bitter rants or expose private conversations. But I did build a new brand, a new client portfolio. And within 6 weeks, we landed a contract bigger than anything I'd handled before. $280,000 for a 6-month campaign. Janelle cried when I showed her the client approval. Emma, this is real. I told you, I whispered. They called me ungrateful. They threw away my award, but they forgot who earned it. Then came the email. Subject, apology and coffee? From Richard Corbin. My chest tightened. I opened it. Emma, I regret how things unfolded. It's clear now that emotions got the better of the situation. Would you consider a brief meeting?
Just coffee.
No expectations. It took me 10 minutes to write back. Richard, thank you for the message. I appreciate the outreach. I'm in a new chapter of my life, one built on kindness and clarity. I don't carry bitterness. But I've also learned not to return to rooms where I had to beg to be respected. I sincerely hope your future leadership choices value what mine once lacked, trust in others. Wishing you the best. Emma Clarkson. I never got a reply, but I heard he stepped down 3 weeks later. It wasn't revenge. It was restoration. When you're silenced or dismissed, the instinct is to scream back. But I chose something else. I chose to build, to speak through my work. And it worked. 1 month after launching, we hit $600,000 in total contracts. We hired 5 new people, all from places where their voices had once been ignored. Our company motto? Build louder than they doubt you. But the real moment came at a leadership panel downtown. I'd been invited last minute to fill in for a no-show speaker. As I stepped onto the stage, I saw him.
Corbin.
In the audience. I froze for half a second. Then I smiled. I'm Emma, I began. And I learned the hard way that some workplaces reward silence more than courage. I chose the other path. And I'm here to tell you, it's worth it. Applause. But I didn't bask in it, because I was already thinking about what we'd build next. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the twist I never saw coming walked into our lives. Her name was Sophie Nguyen, an old colleague, a soft-spoken, razor-sharp financial analyst who used to sit 3 cubicles down from me at Corbin and Price. We were never close, but I respected her. She worked with a quiet precision and always kept her head down. So when I saw her name pop up on our website's contact form, I need to speak with Emma. It's urgent.
Please.
Don't ignore this. I called her immediately. Emma, she said, voice low and shaky. I'm sorry to reach out like this, but something's going on at Corbin and Price, and I couldn't stay silent. I listened as she told me everything. After you left, they created a rule called the Clarkson Clause. No employee is allowed to take outside clients under any circumstances, even if it's after hours. And they're quietly rewriting contracts to take ownership of employee ideas, even those developed off the clock. They're targeting your name like a virus. My stomach dropped. What do they want, Sophie? She hesitated. They want to sue you, or ruin you, or both. Corbin's gone, but the board hasn't forgotten. They see a rise as a threat. There was a long pause. Then her voice cracked. And, Emma, they've been watching me. I made a post last week praising ethical leadership, and my manager called me in and asked if I was applying to your firm. That post had just 2 lines. Integrity doesn't weaken a brand. It strengthens it.
I see that now.
And that was enough to make her a target. I met Sophie in person the next day. She looked tired. Her dark circles spoke more than her voice ever could. They're trying to control the narrative, she said as we sat down. They're afraid of what you represent now. I looked at her carefully. Why come to me? She blinked. Because I believe in what you're building. And I don't want to be part of a machine that silences voices out of fear. I want to matter. And not just on performance charts. That moment rewrote everything I believed about leadership. I nodded slowly. We'll make space for you. And no one will own your voice again. Hiring Sophie wasn't a business decision. It was personal. And almost instantly her impact showed. She spotted holes in our financial projections, restructured our client invoicing system, and built a forecasting tool that saved us over $30,000 in 1 quarter. But more than that, she reminded me of who I once was. Quiet, careful, trying to be good enough in places that never clapped when you stood tall. I made her the head of financial insight within 2 months. And then it happened again. A manila envelope slid under our office door late one Friday evening. No return address. No stamp. Just my name. Inside, a USB stick. And a short note. You should know what they're planning. Protect your people. The files were real. Confidential memos. Internal board emails. A draft press release meant to discredit our firm by alleging unethical talent acquisition, a coded smear, accusing us of poaching staff with bribes and false promises. I read every word. My jaw clenched. The narrative wasn't just about me anymore. It was about painting my entire team as selfish defectors. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I hosted a team meeting that Monday morning. I told them everything, and I gave them a choice. I won't blame anyone who wants to walk away from this heat, I said. You deserve peace. Sophie stood first. I didn't leave a cage just to build a new one, Emma. We're not running. We're growing. Then Janelle stood. Then Mark. Then Ava. One by one. I'm in. I'm not going anywhere. You believed in me when I doubted myself. You're stuck with me now. I felt tears sting behind my eyes. Not from fear. From knowing I wasn't building a business. I was building a movement. We drafted a calm, confident statement. We are aware of recent attempts to challenge our ethics and intentions. We believe in transparency, talent freedom, and merit-based collaboration. We won't engage in smear games because we're too busy building futures. We invite anyone who's been silenced or dismissed to come build with us. That post didn't trend. It didn't go viral, but it reached the right people. Within a week, 5 new resumes came in. One was from someone I never expected. Sandra Blake, former VP of Talent at Corbin and Price. The same woman who once told me, "You're smart, but don't overstep. This place rewards obedience." Her cover letter simply said, "I was wrong. May I have a second chance?" I stared at her email for a long time. Then I replied, "Come in next week." Not for an interview, for a conversation. Because kindness doesn't mean weakness. It means remembering that growth is possible, even for those who once stood against you. Sandra walked in exactly on time. Not a minute early, not a second late. She wore a gray blazer. The same one I remembered from the day she sat across from me in a review meeting and told me to lower my tone if I wanted to be taken seriously. But this time, there was no power game in her eyes. Just something quieter. Regret. Fatigue. And something I didn't expect. Humility. "Emma," she said gently, "thank you for seeing me." I motioned for her to sit. "This isn't an interview, Sandra. You said you wanted a conversation." She nodded. "I do. I owe you more than that."
She didn't waste time.
The board planned a press move.
A hit piece, she said.
They're working with a PR firm to paint you as ungrateful, arrogant, unstable. They've already started feeding the story to certain blogs. Some have ties to ex-board members. I felt my jaw clench. "And your role?" I asked. "I was supposed to help find whistleblowers inside your firm," she admitted. "Employees with complaints, even small ones. My job was to inflate them." There it was. The truth, delivered without spin. "Why didn't you?" I asked. She looked me straight in the eye. "Because you weren't the one who humiliated me in meetings. You weren't the one who took credit for my hiring plans or mocked my ideas because they weren't aggressive enough."
Corbin did that. And so did the board. Her voice caught for the first time.
"I stayed because I was scared. I stayed because I had bills. I stayed because I thought playing the game was the only way to survive.
But then I saw you walk away.
And I saw you rise." Silence hung in the air. Then I said softly, "Everyone's scared. The difference is most people never admit it." Sandra didn't ask for a job. She asked for forgiveness. And then she offered something unexpected: documents. A whistleblower folder she'd downloaded before quitting. Emails, timelines, proof that the smear campaign wasn't just personal, it was systemic. They were doing it to other former employees too. "We can take this to the press," Janelle said the next day, pacing in our small but growing office. "We could blow the roof off this firm." But I shook my head.
"No.
We don't feed fire with fire. That's not who we are." They all looked at me. "So, what do we do?"
Sophie asked.
"We show them who we are. Not through noise. Through impact." The next week, we launched something bold. The Open Integrity Fellowship. A fully funded mentorship program for young professionals who had left toxic workplaces and wanted to rebuild their confidence and their careers. We started with 10 fellows. Then 20. Applications tripled by the end of the month. But the most surprising email came from someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Brian, the client whose account started all this.
"Emma,
I saw the fellowship. It's inspiring. I want to contribute, and more than that, I want to offer you something. My company just secured a national ad contract. I want you and your team to run it. Entirely yours. Full creative control. $1.2 million budget. Let me know." I stared at the email for full 2 minutes. Then I forwarded it to my team and wrote only 3 words. "We did it." But success has a way of stirring silent enemies. The day after we announced the contract publicly, it happened. A journalist cornered me on the sidewalk outside a leadership event. Microphone in hand. Camera rolling. "Emma Clarkson, did you really steal your clients from your last firm? Were you the cause of their financial downfall? Sources say your attitude made you impossible to manage." I froze. The camera light felt like a spotlight in a courtroom.
My team wasn't with me.
I hadn't prepared for this. But then I heard my own voice, steady but calm. I didn't steal clients. I built trust with them, trust my last firm failed to value. And if asking to be treated fairly is seen as attitude, then yes, I stood up for myself. And I'll never apologize for that. She opened her mouth for another question, but I was already walking away. That clip went viral. Not because it was flashy, but because it was real. Within hours, hashtags trended. Hashtag integrity over ego. Hashtag Emma Clarkson was right. People didn't need perfection. They needed someone who reminded them that saying no didn't mean burning bridges. It meant building new roads. By the end of the month, we had more offers than we could accept. Our team expanded to 40. Sandra officially joined as a partner, and I watched her rebuild herself from the inside out. One afternoon, she brought in pastries and left a note on my desk. Thank you for giving me space to become someone I'm proud of again. And that's when I realized I didn't win because I fought them harder. I won because I refused to become them. 3 months had passed since the media ambush. And though our firm was thriving, there were days I still felt a pinch of doubt, moments where I asked myself, did I go too far? Did I rise just to prove a point? But the answer always came when I stepped into our office. A place filled with laughter, long coffee breaks, real conversations, and a team that didn't flinch when someone disagreed. We were building something real. Not a product, not just a brand. A place people felt safe being brave. It was a Friday morning when the biggest surprise of all arrived. I was reviewing pitch decks when Ava knocked on my door, holding a familiar navy blue envelope. It's hand-delivered, she said, brows raised. No sender name, but I recognized the seal. It was from Corbin and Price. I took a slow breath before opening it. Inside was a single printed letter. Dear Ms. Clarkson, in light of recent public narratives and in an effort to protect our legacy, the board of Corbin and Price would like to propose an acquisition of your firm, in full, at a starting valuation of $9.7 million. Should you agree, you will be offered an executive leadership role and full operational autonomy under our banner. We believe your talent is better harnessed within an existing legacy structure. Let's build forward together. Sincerely, Board of Directors. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because after everything, the award they threw, the accusations they pushed, the people they silenced, they still believed money would erase it. That weekend, I called a team meeting. I placed the letter on the table and read it out loud. No drama. Just facts. Then I looked around the room. I'm not entertaining this, I said clearly. But if anyone thinks we should speak now. No one did. Sophie raised her hand. Do we have matches? I've got a lighter. We all laughed. But the silence after held something stronger. Conviction. We weren't for sale. Because what we built was never just about money. It was about freedom. And then, life surprised me again. I was invited to speak at a national leadership summit, a massive one, broadcasted live. Corporate heads, university deans, policy advisors, the works. My keynote? Redefining loyalty in the modern workplace. I stood backstage, adjusting the mic on my lapel, when I heard a voice behind me. Emma? I turned. It was Brian, the client who had backed me from the beginning. But he wasn't alone. Next to him stood a woman I hadn't seen in years. My mother. My breath caught. I hadn't spoken to her since college. We'd drifted apart after my dad's death, mostly because she never understood why I wouldn't just settle into a safe job and stop chasing dreams. Now, she looked older, but her eyes were softer. I saw your name on the brochure, she said, voice trembling. I didn't know how much you'd built. I'm sorry I didn't support you back then. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. But then she added something that broke me. I'm proud of you. Not because you're successful, but because you stayed kind. I walked onto that stage with tears still drying at the corners of my eyes. And I told my story. I told them about the Throne Award, the name calling, the people who whispered behind closed doors that I was too ambitious, too loud, too independent. And then I told them what I built, with kindness, with grace, with a team that never asked me to shrink. I ended with a truth that took me years to believe. The world will always try to shame you for growing outside the lines they drew for you. But you don't owe them your quiet. You owe them your truth. The room stood. I didn't cry. I smiled. Because I had finally spoken from a place no one could take from me anymore. Freedom. Epilogue. 2 years later, our firm is now one of the top emerging consultancy brands in the country. We've trained over 300 fellows, employed more than 70 staff, and created a fund specifically for whistleblowers who left toxic companies with nothing. One of our conference rooms is named Integrity. Another is named No Apologies. And my cracked, broken award plaque? I had it framed, not to remember the insult, but to remember the moment I chose myself. And I wouldn't change a thing.